Good morning, everybody. Another work week is come and gone, and we are back in the shop working on Keith's truck this weekend. Dylan's in here also today helping us cut down his 12-bolt rear axle. So I'm going to shoot a little video showing you guys what it is we're doing to that axle and why we're doing that. So this was the original 12-bolt that was in his truck. A couple years ago, we did the DSE 4-link or the Quadra-link on this rear end. So we've already had this on this table once before when Robbie was here, and we put the truing bar through it and welded all the 4-link brackets and panhard bar brackets to it. Well, back then we noticed that the axles had a ton of play in them. The bearings were shot. We put bearings in it. It's still on the original axles that were C-clip axles that had a ton of play in them. So moving forward, doing big road course stuff, we have no tolerance for pad knockback. Keith went with some Wilwood big brakes for the rear of the truck. So now we're gonna step up and turn this 12-bolt into a floater. For you guys that don't know what a floater is what it sounds like. It has a floating axle in it. So it is not clipped in with a C-clip, and it's not retained by like a bearing retainer plate like a traditional 9-inch. It has the axle shaft that just floats in between the hub and the third member itself. So it's safer, the axle can't come out. And then the wheel and tire is bolted to the hub and bearing assembly, which is bolted to the end of the axle housing. So we've got to cut the ends of the tubes, and we've got a hub weld-on end. So these are a kit available through Holley Performance or through us, but they are a Detroit Speed C6 floater kit. So what they do is use a C6 Corvette hub and bearing assembly, and so off of that pattern, they machine a billet steel weld-on end. So we've got all that kit here, and I'll just run through the parts with you real quick. So what I did earlier in the week was try to get the stacked height of this. So this is where you would take your wheel mount surface width. So if you measured from here to this surface on the other side of the axle, we're gonna target 63 3/4 on his axle, just like the factory axle was. Well, a hair narrower, but what we got here is a factory C6 Corvette rear rotor. And then underneath it is the hub and bearing assembly. And you can see that the hub and bearing assembly has 33 spline outer. It's got provision there for a billet cap that retains it. And then you can see here, this is a billet spacer to take up the room of the hub inside, inside of it. And then this is the billet weld-on end. And then I've already mocked up the brake caliper bracket. So this brake caliper bracket allows you to either run the factory Corvette caliper right off of it, or you can use the Wilwood adapter plate that goes to this, and you can run a radial mount caliper in a larger diameter rotor too. So this is like, I don't know the metric equivalent, but I guess it's a little over 12 inches, probably like 12.2. And then so we've got the factory replacement Wilwood caliper that goes on here. So anyways, Dylan's gonna cut down those axle tubes so that we can weld on these billet steel ends. So pretty cool kit. We're gonna try to hurry up and get this done today so that I can take the axle measurements and order axles for this truck. So that's what we're gonna do today. We got some cameras set up. We'll get a little bit of montage footage of him cutting this down. We'll slide the truing bar through it and weld it all together. And real quick, I'll show you how we take the measurements. Did you take that paper? Yeah. So we already know that our total width, wheel mount surface to wheel mount surface, is gonna be 63 3/4. And then those hubs, the weld-on ends, and the rotors, that stack height is 5 1/8 on both sides. So what that leaves us is 53 1/2. We divide that in half to get our center line, but we always move the pinion offset to the passenger side by a 1/2 inch. So we do that for U-joint longevity. It doesn't put them directly in line, and it's a little bit better for weight offset too. So anyways, this is our from center line to where Dylan's gonna make these cuts. These are the two measurements. So that's what he's doing now, is laying out his cut lines. He'll get these things cut, and then we'll slide the truing bar through it and tack the ends on. Thanks for helping, dude.
Yeah, man, always.
And then Keith's over here right now putting together his new steering shaft. You guys saw in some footage a few minutes ago probably that we put one of our race columns in it, and now that's a little bit closer to the firewall, so we had to order a different Borgeson shaft that's a little bit longer, and obviously a different upper joint since this is a race column versus the stock column. So he's putting that together, and then I'm gonna start wiring. So I'm mocking up all the under dash harness for Keith's truck. Well, like one of the big jobs is, so now we just use this little turn signal lever. And so it doesn't have that like multi-function switch inside the column to like interpret, you know, how to send power to the taillights. So we use these little modules here. So I'm wiring this thing in, this will mount onto the dash. So that way when it's, you know, left turn, it can flash, and then we hit your brakes, you know, it'll turn the brake lights on too. So I'm doing that. So this is the American Auto wire harness that's specific for this year truck, but like we reroute some of the stuff. Well, for instance, he doesn't have an ignition switch on the dash anymore, or on the column anymore. He's gonna have a push button start. So like some of the powers have to move. So that's what I'm doing, just mocking up all this stuff so that I can pull it all out and then do it on my workbench, and then, you know, loom it all up and put it back in. So yeah, at least there won't be one old wire in this truck anymore. He had the factory fuse block in this truck up until now, so they still have the old glass fuses and everything. So this will be a huge improvement. No more wiring issues to worry about.
Nice and safe.
All right guys, last weekend you saw where Dylan came in and helped us out, and he welded on the floater ends on Keith's 12 bolt. And so now I'm actually going to go ahead and put the whole rear end back together. So during the week, during lunchtime and after work, Keith got the housing all painted up, and then this morning I came in and laid out all the parts so we can show you guys how to put the floater kits together. So remember, these is the weld on ends. They accept the C6, C7 style unit bearings. These are the new ones that Detroit Speed is sending out. If any of you guys were familiar with these kits before, they used to send out an SKF, well, I don't know if it was SKF brand, but they used to send out a C6 unit bearing, and those have the wheel speed sensor all integrated into it, and it actually has the wiring pigtail too. So all that you would have to do is just pin the ground and then the signal wire back to the C6 style. Well now, just so you know, they've upgraded all these, even the C6 floater kits like that we have here. This is a C7 style pickup. So if you plan to do wheel speed, you guys are gonna have to buy a C7 style pickup, and you're gonna have to drill a hole and mount them in these new hub adapters or hub spacers that Detroit Speed sends with you. So it's a little more costly, and it's a little more of an advanced install than it used to be, but nonetheless you can do individual speed pickups from both tires. So anyways, like first step here is that we're gonna put the outer tube seals in. No matter what rear end that you guys have, the seal provision is in the weld on end. So the seal that comes with it is you know, made to knock right in there. So one thing that I've always done for years and years, and may not be the most common thing or even the right thing to do, but I always put like a little bit of RTV where the seal's gonna go inside the housing. Just because years ago I had an outer seal that I could not get to stop leaking, and it wasn't the rubber seal, it was just an inconsistency of how this was tapped in, and there was a little bit of fluid that came through it. So nowadays I always just put a little bit of RTV on the seal. Kind of in an awkward spot here.
Grinder.
There we go. Just like that, first try, easy peasy. Anyways, once the axle tube end seal is in, then this is the hub spacer and this is the hub. So they send you one of these hub spacers, and the reason they send this to you is in case you're not going to use the Corvette backing plate. So these rotors have a provision for a drum style parking brake. So you can see in there that the factory Corvettes had a drum style parking brake. Keith ain't got time for all that. So we're not gonna do the backing plates, so you have to use one of these. What we have come to find over the past few years is that sometimes to get the caliper spacing just right, you might need another one. So that's why I've got a couple here, because I did pre-fit this and we needed a little more caliper offset. So get this guy on there. All right, so we've got the rear end, we've got the floater ends welded on. Earlier you guys saw us talk about how to determine the width, how much of the tube to cut off. So those are all welded on, and now we gotta measure for the axles. What Dylan's doing down there is determining what spline count this carrier was. It's stock, so I'm sure that, I think stock was 27 or 28 spline. So we'll have to order these axles with stock spline inner and 33 spline outer. So all the C6s were 33 spline on the hub. A 12 bolt is the easiest to measure, well, because you can see inside here. And we're gonna put the cross pin in, and all I'm gonna do is literally run this up and touch the cross pin and take an overall measurement to the outside of the splines in the hub. And then what we'll do is we'll just back off an 1/8 from that measurement. So that'll be our length. So, do you have a flashlight? Sorry, you're probably counting.
Can you explain how you got these ends on there?
We welded them on.
Okay. Anybody can do this at home.
Did you?
Just slap
no
them
one
on
can
there.
do. No, you cannot do this at home. We've got a truing bar. I don't know if you caught any footage of that, but we've got a big solid steel bar that goes all the way through here. And we pull the carrier, and then we've got alignment pucks that get clamped into the clamps. And then we've got ends that we machined for these DSC ends that just fit inside there. So the truing bar, the alignment bar, fits really snug through all 4 alignment pucks. So that way, the axle's perfectly in alignment, you know, with the carrier. So anyways, we put the truing bar through it, put our pucks in, there's retainer clamps that go onto the bar, and then you can weld the ends on. And we have to put the right amount of pinion angle in these too. And we do that just to get the calipers in the right spot. You wanna look inside there and see if I've got this against the pin? Can you see me?
Yeah, you're touching the pin now.
Okay. This is exactly 31.
31.
Yeah, so the left axle is 31 inches. And if you want to look in here, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but what I'm measuring to, can you see that? Here, come around me on the other side. Can I see your flashlight? So what I'm doing is literally just measuring to the end of the splines in the hub here, and it's 31 inches. And then what we'll do is we'll just take, sorry if that's not doing very well, but we'll just take an 1/8 off that. So the axle's got room to play in there.
Okay.
Here you go.
And when you were cutting the ends off the tubes, the goal obviously is to have the same track width as previously.
Yeah, yep. It is touching it there. So what's a 32nd over 5/8, 11/16? Yeah, right under, or a 16th under 3/4 is 11/16, is that right? Yeah. So this is 30 and 11/16. And then so now that we have this, we do have the ends, like the seals that'll tap in the hub end here, that'll seal out here. But we're also gonna put inner seals on this thing too. So we use the Seals It tube seals, and they've got 3 different O-rings on the outside, 2 layers of rubber gasket on the inside, and we pack them full of grease, and we hammer those in so that gear oil can't get out into the tubes anymore. Then we'll just vent the center housing. So that doesn't ever have to come back out again.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, that's it. We're gonna order some axles from Moser and blast and paint this. It's done. Put the brakes on it.
It's a big deal.
All right, that's it. We got the whole rear end together. Our camera died as usual during the during the differential install, but diff's in it, axle seals are in it. So typically on a floater kit like this, we'll do an inner seal from Seals It, but these tubes are too small for all the inner seals that I can buy. So he's gonna run without inner seals and just deal with the outers. We're having the axle shafts polished out here to hopefully keep a good seal, but these might potentially leak after, you know, a year or so, but it's a pretty easy deal. You just pop this stuff off and knock a new seal back in it. But anyways, things that I like about this DSC floater kit. Obviously, it's got a heavy duty hub and bearing assembly. It's a hub and bearing assembly that you can buy from a parts store if you need to, but here's the other thing we did, is it allows you to use Corvette brakes. In this instance, we use a Wilwood stock replacement, which once we started looking at the pricing, this Wilwood replacement caliper was like the same price as like an OE Corvette caliper. And then running this size rear brake, these rotors from Rock Auto are AC Delco, and I think they were 32 bucks a rotor. You know, so we've got a good pad, we've got a good caliper, we know the piston surface area to do the math for the master cylinder, and then we can just have throwaway blank rotors, you know, for $32 a piece. So pretty cool. All stuff that you can buy at a parts store if you need to, you know, as far as the rotors and seals and bearings and stuff like that. So now all we gotta do is finish the frame and put this back underneath the truck.